Hello and welcome to the video of our Deanery Gathering. We met in late September as we reflected on what the tasks had been set for us by Bishop Richard, and Penny produced a PowerPoint with challenges for us all to take away and to think about. We begin with the collect for Hildegard of Bingen, whose day it was when we met. Most gracious and glorious God, whose servant Hildegard, strong in faith, was caught up in the vision of your heavenly courts. By the breath of your Spirit, open our eyes to glimpse your glory, and our lips to sing your praise with all the angels. Through Jesus Christ, your Son, our Lord, who is alive and reigns with you in the unity of the Holy Spirit, one God, now and forever. Amen.
Amen. Thank you very much indeed, Mark. By way of opening remarks, our last meeting was a Zoom meeting with Bishop Richard, at which he outlined some of the ways in which the Church of England is changing and is being forced to change by showing us a lot of statistics. And you had the Zoom record of his meeting, if you weren't able to attend it, posted to you with the agenda for this meeting. In the second of these meetings, we're going to take it on a further step once we've got through the formalities of welcoming new members and going through the minutes of the last two Zoom meetings. The Reverend Penny Padrell, who comes down from the bottom end of the deanery in the parishes around Dixton and Simmons Yat and that sort of bottom corner, or partly in Wales, is going to talk through some of the work that she has done for and on behalf of the chapter about ideas of how the deanery could work together better to take Christ to new people. Because one of the problems the bishop outlined is that we are an aging population. A lot of our congregations are the wrong side of 70. In 20 years' time, they will have been gone and there's no one new coming in. So how can we as a deanery inspire new people to come into the church by new ways of doing things, by reaching out to them, by showing more charity to our neighbours? Penny's had a lot of thoughts about that and is going to talk through them. We'll do a little bit of discussion on that because I'm sure she's happy to take questions and discuss it. But what we would really like you to do, led by the incumbents, is to take this back to your PCCs, either virtually or Zoom or at your APCMs, and discuss it before our next meeting, which is in December, Tuesday the 1st of December, and then come back with any imaginative thoughts, any red lines you'd like to draw in the sand, and we can have a really fruitful discussion, because we really want this to be something that's grassroots upward, that is inspired from the person in the pew and is inspired from the person that isn't in the pew because they don't feel comfortable with coming to the pew. And we want to make our deanery a beacon of Christianity for all the reasons that Jesus inspired us to love God and to love him. So that's the background, and success will be if Penny inspires you to take this back and her views on the message to your PCCs for a fruitful discussion, leading on to a fruitful discussion, which in turn we hope will lead on to the nascent formation of a plan about how we can do things better. In closing those remarks, one of the big drivers is that it is highly likely in the foreseeable future that in this deanery we will lose one paid incumbent because we're not affording to pay them and because there aren't enough coming forwards. So with that background, we must think about how we can still bring God's love and Christ's teaching to our deanery in as an efficient way as possible. So those are my opening remarks, and I particularly like to thank the Rural Dean Mark Johnson for asking me to do this. I regard it as a great honour, and I've got big shoes to fill, filling his boots, but thank you, Mark. I see item 2 after opening prayers is apologies. Do we have any apologies, Marianne? You have to unmute, Marianne.
I think if you press the space bar, it will do it.
I pressed on mute.
Yeah, you're on mute. Well done.
Maybe I didn't press hard enough. So we had apologies from Richard Miners and from Lila Wayman, and apologies from Fanny Smith, and we didn't have too many apologies actually. So those are the apologies so far.
Thank you very much. It's disappointing. I'm struggling to find out how many we are here tonight, but it will say on all our computers. I think we may be 29. But the important thing is that we take this message back, and Marion will be distributing the minutes widely.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any new members tonight that we should be welcoming?
Not any members that I know of.
Okay, thank you. So our next item is minutes of the Deanery Synod on the 10th of March. This was led by the Reverend Sean Semple while Mark was on his sabbatical. It was a long time ago. They have been circulated with the agenda. Is there anyone who wishes to raise points of inaccuracy about them? And from the deafening silence, I can see no one quickly unmuting or raising their hand. I'll assume that we can take those as a true record of the meeting. And in terms of actions arising from them, there are actions, but I think they'll mainly be covered by the main item on the agenda and the Treasurer's report at item 8. There is a slight update on the Why Reaches vacancy, but Mark Johnson's going to do that at item 7. So if you're all happy with that, in due course, Mark or I will sign it as a true record.
Can I just update people from David Howell? I don't know if David's with us this evening. I think he might be on holiday. Oh, no, the other David Howell, the Reverend David Howell. Sorry, we've got two David Howells. It's very confusing. David took a collection for the charity in Tanzania that he runs, and he's been updating us with them getting a food bank and hopefully getting some kind of growing plots available, because obviously coronavirus has affected the communities in northern Tanzania as well. And so the work continues. So if you are looking for a link with a charity, because you've got a sudden windfall and you'd fancy giving a bit of money, David will be very happy to receive it to pass on to his Tanzanian Street Children charity.
Thank you, Mark. Are there any other matters people wish to raise? Then the next minutes, the virtual gathering we had with Bishop Richard, we are classing as a Deanery Synod Zoom meeting. The only record of it is the recording, and so I don't think we need to discuss whether that's accurate or not, but just to say that that is classed as a Deanery meeting. The important thing that you take away from it is that he finished off with asking some questions from his presentation, and those have been circulated in his PowerPoint on the last sheet. When you are taking back to your parishes or your benefice or your PCC the points that Penny's going to raise, could you include Bishop Richard's questions as well and talk through those amongst your PCC, because they are very important and good questions, and it all helps us to form our idea of where the parish, of where the deanery might go. If we're all happy on that, it takes us to item 6, and really the meat of this meeting is Penny Powdrill's presentation. So Penny, if you're happy and ready, thank you very much.
Yes, I'm ready. Okay, I'm going to, in a minute, I'm going to I've got a PowerPoint to show you, which I think I'm going to do now, because at the beginning of the PowerPoint, I've actually put down Bishop Richard's questions. So, yeah, okay, I'll get this right. Where's it gone? Share screen. Oh, can you, Patrick, you've disabled screen sharing. So can you share, allow me to share the screen, please? Can somebody tell him how to do it?
It says one participant can share at a time.
Yeah.
So that seems that could be you. But
yeah, let that be me.
But I don't know how I give you permission. It's not asking me. I'll do multiple participants can share simultaneously. Try
Okay.
now.
Hang on, try again. Oh, that's fine. Okay. Slideshow. Come on, come on, come on. Oh, come on. Right, slideshow. It's not letting me.
We've got your first slide up.
Yeah, you can see that, but it's not letting me from the beginning. Let's try that. Oh, there we go. Right. Okay. What I've done here, as you can see, is I've put down the questions, and I will go through them really, really quickly because they made me think about what the rest of the presentation is going to be about. So, and so many of them were about discussions and not about actually doing things. For example, the first one, if you were having an APCM in 5 years' time, well, what would you do? Taking the 3 most popular of these, what steps? Well, what would you do? What's stopping you doing it? Again, do something. How would you address these barriers? Well, you know, let's put the barriers down. What help might you need? Well, again, I thought about there's quite a lot of help out there. Help from the wider diocese, again, etc. So the second lot of questions now on this page now, what scope is there for using your buildings, etc. That's a PCC matter. On a joint benefit Sunday, why don't people go if it's not in their parish? Again, that's not really for me to think about. So those questions on this sheet are really actually more about the things that you need to talk about within your parishes. So I now get on to what I want to talk about, which is Deanery champions and networks. And it's really stop talking and start doing. And that's really my message. How did this all come about? Well, as you can see there, I'm going to send this PowerPoint to the parishes so everybody can have a look at it. Basically, it came about because we are in interregnum, and it made me think very much about what we should be doing, because it has been mooted that the new vicar at Y Reaches will spend 20% of their time working for the deanery. And I asked that chapter, well, what are the deanery ever going to do for us? What are we going to get back in exchange? And as a consequence of this, because we thought it would be useful for the deanery and the clergy to analyse what they were good at and what they wanted, and then we could identify what was missing. And so that's how all this came about. So my idea was that in the end, we should actually do something, and this is what I thought we could do. We sent out a skills analysis, and also I think something which you've also had, which was a sort of a sheet, a very colourful sheet, which was called Deanery Champions and Networks. If you can see it, that's the sheet which I think was sent out for you. And quite a few ideas came out. One of probably the most popular was the idea of doing something about caring for the planet. And we were about to start with young shoots just before lockdown, and we'd recruited really well. But this idea could well be used right across the deanery. And certainly Mark Johnson, myself, the people at Walford are very keen to help with doing something on these lines. So if you're thinking about setting up an eco church, forest church, etc., don't just sit there and think, oh, I think that's a good idea. Get in touch with us and we'll tell you what we've done and take it from there. The next idea was obviously linking with teens and families. Again, there are relatively few teenagers within the deanery, really. We've got a lot of primary schools, but we've really only got one secondary school. And so we thought it might be quite useful. And this is where we link with the diocese, because we've got intergenerational missioners, we've got Lizzie Hackney, Christine Katanak, who works in Ross, and certainly Caroline Pascoe and Chris Blanchard have done a lot of this, working Zoom meetings and Zoom services on Sunday throughout lockdown, and have got a lot of experience. So again, you know, you could extend it without any difficulty at all. This is low-hanging fruit. This is stuff that all the parishes in the deanery could think about. You could just get hold of one of those people and ask how they did it, and could you get involved. Similarly, prayer groups. My experience of prayer groups goes back about 50 odd years, and there are lots of prayer groups within the deanery, but we're also very conscious that some people like different ways of praying. For example, some like just to pray quietly and be led by somebody and just say amen. Others like to be led by the Spirit and are much more active, but other people feel that's quite uncomfortable. So again, if you think that you would like to join a different type of prayer group, just let us know. I mean, I've said, speak to your own vicar, because almost certainly there's a prayer group available. Similarly, I won't go into any great detail here. You know, it speaks for itself. Start up a Bible study, join us. Growing in Christian faith is something that the deanery could well do with. My experience, again, of lots of PCC meetings is that although part of the work of a PCC should be mission, most of the work of the PCC seems to be in money raising. And I suspect that you will recognise that. But experience tells me that actually where we have run groups in the evening, which have not been time constrained, which are not particularly about worship, but about finding out, these have been incredibly popular. Excuse me. And we can offer off-the-shelf courses, or we can devise courses to suit whatever is required. For example, I ran a short history of the Old Testament, which went over about 9 weeks. I ran it several times. And it was just aimed at people who were reading in church, and to give them some understanding of, when they read an Old Testament lesson, where it came from. And then similarly, within Why Brooks benefits, but our magazine, we have a joint magazine, Why Reaches and Why Brooks, Border News, and Ben Bentham puts an ethical issue in every month, and it's fascinating to read. But they could form without any difficulty, because Ben's done a lot of the work already. Ben, you could start up probably a Zoom-based discussion group based around ethics. Those are really relatively low-hanging fruit. The other low-hanging fruit, which I think I mentioned later on, but the Reverend Richard Jones is going to offer to help with parish finances. If you want to get involved in schools, again, speak to your head teacher, your vicar or rector. You have to, if you're going to be involved in schools, obviously a DBS check is required, but most schools would welcome, not necessarily immediately, but godly play, assisting with children going into the church, open the book, people going in as prayer champions, whatever. So again, there's a lot you could do rather than talk about. make a joyful noise unto the Lord. This was Crispin particularly. We're not theoretically allowed to sing in church at the moment, but we will be able to do that again. And we do enjoy church music, and it can vary tremendously from gospel music to teze, whatever, just hymn singing. Within our benefice, Jill Stevens has been running throughout lockdown teze, and that's been very popular. So if you want to get involved in that, talk to either of them. And the other thing is innovative worship. One of the experiences that we've had over the last 6 months or so is that we have been able to experience anything from Book of Common Prayer and Common Worship to quite innovative worship. People have been able to look on Facebook, on YouTube. You've checked into websites all over the world. And certainly one of the things that the bishop was talking about is reimagining worship in a way that's perhaps going to be far more inviting to people who you wouldn't really invite to one of your services. You might like to worship in that way, but does everybody else? So if you want to talk to somebody about reimagining worship, want to get involved in some way or other, the Reverends Sean Semple and Tim Starling would be love to hear from you. If you're still not inspired, if I haven't got you worked up yet, local history buffs and researchers. Many of our churches have visitor information which is out of date, and the Black Lives Matter movement has reminded us of memorials. And I found one in Dixton. I'm just looking around to see what we've got there, and there was some chap had been a governor of Gorey Island, and I had no idea where it was. But as soon as I found Gorey Island, I found that it had a slave museum. And so, you know, we need to sort of be aware of that and perhaps adjust our visitor information to take on board exactly what the implications of that are. So you don't have to be clergy. If you just like local history, you know, you could go around the churches, look and see what's there, do some research and help us out. The middle one, are you spitting mad from Howcapel or breathing fire from Bridgestone? Does the lack of comment from a Christian viewpoint really annoy you? Why not set up a group which is prepared to make these comments in the local or national press? And if you've still got nothing for you, oh, there's nothing there for me, I don't want to get involved. Many churches need odd jobs doing. And I think the repair shop has been one of the surprise hits on television recently. And so if you are or know people who are really good at DIY, and if you was a go-to group within the deanery where you could say, I just need something doing, it doesn't need a faculty, but could you do it? I'm sure that would be a very popular way to do something. Working within the diocese, well, with the diocese, vocations to ministry, obviously, if you think people are called to ministry in some way, those are the names of the people there. Particularly Neil Patterson, late of Archenfield, John Daniels, etc. If you want to set up a local ministry team, again, talk to us. Church and Society, I remember Christine Pepler coming to speak to us once at Bishopswood Hall, and we were all incredibly impressed by the things that she was doing and knew about. But, you know, apart from perhaps some churches setting up collections for food banks and things, I suspect that not a lot of us have worked out a way in which we can actually help the society using our churches. And then finance and all that side of things. When we've got Wendy Coombe, we've got various other people within the diocese who are more than capable and happy to help us. So if we are answering the bishop's question, what we could do, how could we change our churches to make them more useful? These are the go-to people within the diocese who really can help. And And then find this parish giving. We've got two Reverend Joneses, Reverend Jones in Hereford and Reverend Richard Jones based at Langaran. And the Langaran one, Jones Langaran, he has offered to look up all about the card readers and things. And so if any parish in the deanery wants to know what would be the best card reader, how do you go about buying one, what do you need to know, simply ask Richard Jones, and he is doing research on it right now. So we also need a communications expert, somebody, and for this to work, we really need to work together, and it needs to go out so that people in the deanery know what's available. You know, there should be no excuse for not knowing if there's a prayer group that you would like to go to, or a Bible study looking at John's Gospel this month, or whatever. What you need to, we should be able to find that out very quickly. So if you have reasonable IT skills, quite good at producing leaflets, etc., you don't have to be particularly, you just need to be a good communications person. So again, if you want to do that, please let me know, because I'd love to hear from you. And help wanted. Hello, I'm an expert. Many of us have ideas, but getting them from our brain into somebody else's computer, which is what we so often want at the moment. So if you're good with IT, are you under 30? Can give advice on how to make the videos, arrange Zoom meet. I've cracked PowerPoint presentations. No, honestly, we have a job for you. We really, really do need somebody within our deanery who can help out and says, yes, give me a call, and then I'll show you how to do it. Because so much of this nowadays seems to be dependent on having somebody with a really good IT base. And I think that's it. Oh, yes, I've also put on contact details for clergy. So many of you will know the telephone numbers of your own vicars, but if many of my colleagues would like to send me their phone numbers, or the ones they prefer to be called on, I can add these before I send the PowerPoint out. Okay, that's stop share. I'm going to go back now.
You're back.
Okay. So that's what I came up with. I did also have some thoughts on what I would like to get out of this meeting as a result of that, and I came up with some smart outcomes. I would love, by the end, or very, very shortly, to have identified 4 networks, champions, whatever, which we can set up by the end of 2020. And I think that should be perfectly possible. Identified 1 or 2 people who would act as champions for various groups. Identify 1 or more people who would liaise with the champions. So that communications expert. Identified someone who can help with this technical expertise. And I really would like to think that I've inspired parishes to work with Richard Jones, because again, the bishop has asked us to think very much about giving, and we're supposed to be doing it this Sunday, but I think a lot of us are doing it with harvest festivals. And I'd love for you to take away my presentation into your parishes and think about possible networks, think about possible alternatives. I don't mind what we do. I just really, really, really want us to do something rather than just talk about it. That's the end of all I have to say. I would be happy to answer any questions.
Well, thank you very, very much indeed, Penny. It was absolutely brilliant. And if I might just add, when you do take this back to your parishes and your PCCs, it's anybody who wants to say anything and any idea will be considered. So not just what Penny's been discussing today, but if she's missed something that you feel she sort of discussed, if you're burning to have a youth service once a month, but your parish can't cope with it, but you think it could happen at deanery level, tell us, because within the deanery, we could do things like that. So it's that sort of thinking. Now, Mark Johnson, I think, was holding his hand up.
I was just applauding Penny on her presentation. I think Stephen's put something up on the. There is a chat function. If anybody hasn't discovered it, if you look at the bottom of your screen, in the middle, just there's a little chat function. If you click on that, you'll see there are various messages that have come up, and Stephen's put one up there for everybody to look at as well. So with some information on, what I would also just like to draw your attention to is the Champions and Networks sheet chart that Penny has put together as a kind of aid memoir. Yeah, it did go out with the minutes,
yes.
So you should be able to access it. It is a PDF, so you might have had to download Adobe to reach it, but it does give us again a kind of and it looks like an overwhelming number of things, but what I would say is, what strikes you in your parish or your benefice or your group that you can do on that list? So if you're thinking about chaplaincy development, for example, take the top right hand one, because you've got a nursing home, okay, just do something with that. I mean, at the moment we're not allowed in nursing homes, but when things ease, what does that nursing home need? What prayerful support can we give the staff and the residents in that nursing home? And it might be that there might just be you from one parish and somebody else from another parish in your benefice who would go in and just pray with people, just go around and just knock on doors and say hello and see how people are. That might be all that is needed and all that is required, but you're making an extra link with the nursing home. So just choose one or two things out of all those titles to concentrate on, because I think otherwise you can just be overwhelmed thinking, oh, we must try and do something with a messy church or forest church and whatever. Just what it is that resonates with where you are as a parish or where you are as a benefice, and try and just concentrate on one or two of those things and let us know, because actually that's the other side of it, is if you let us know that something is working and something is successful, we can spread it round to other people. And there's nothing worse, there's nothing better than a bit of plagiarism, is there? If something's working in one parish and they've done it this way, it's nothing better than nicking their idea, tweaking it slightly for your own parish and then applying it. Saves you having to use all the brain power. Yeah. So again, it's about finding those things that are working, celebrating those and saying, well, we could do something similar here. It doesn't take much. Let's give it a go. Now, it might not, I'm hopeful it will work. It might not work because of the different contexts. But I think, again, that's a thing of success breeds more success. And it encourages other people in the church to think, oh, actually, there's a life outside that hour and a half on a Sunday morning when folks get together.
Thank you, Mark. Any other questions or points? I can see a couple coming up in the printed chat from Paul Cannell and Fiona.
Can I just, Paul, I think, asked me if it was possible. I did the original of this pink sheet in Publisher, and I'm quite happy to send it out, but I'm quite aware that a lot of people can't download Publisher. That's why I converted it into a PDF. But if you want to publish, if you want it in Publisher, if you can, I'm just trying to think how people would know my email, except from the fact that it's on the PowerPoint. But to get back to me and ask your local vicar; they'll know what my email is. Paul.
Yes, Penny, excellent what you've said. I think the key thing is communications, and I think right across the benefits, I think there's still a trend to think just at parish and not even benefice level. But with this, we can actually stitch things in right across the whole of the deanery, and if you get enough people interested, you sort of get a critical mass when it takes off. It's very difficult if there's just one or two people, but actually 3 or 4, they can enthuse each other and they feel collectively something's happening. And as I think Mark said, nothing succeeds like success. And I think if we can just identify one thing and do it well and celebrate it. Us Brits are not very good at celebrating. We need to celebrate it and publish it wide. I think what we have learned from the good thing that's come out of COVID is that the church has been seen far wider because of streaming it. Lots of people on the fringe have seen what we're doing. I mean, the church in the past was very involved because they had church schools, hospitals, etc. But the work that we've been doing locally and at deanery and diocesan level has actually brought the church into the role it should be. That's out with the people, working with the people. The church is the people. I think a lot of people are still fixated that the church is the buildings, beautiful though they may be and high cost maintenance, but really the church is about the people. And, you know, I think this is where we can get people working together and enthuse each other and celebrate our achievements. It's like the church spire appeal. You know, we've done this. You said, we did, and that's the result of it. So I'm very optimistic this can actually bring a lot of people together and also bring it wider than not just PCC and benefice, but actually deanery. When people understand what a deanery is, it took me a while to understand myself.
Thank you, Paul. Anybody else want to make any comments? It's quite hard because you're all on two screens, so I keep looking around to see if anyone's hand's up.
Yes, there's somebody.
Fiona.
And just one of the things at the moment as we go into the winter and the potential for being more restricted is not uplifting. But one of the positives out of COVID seems to me that certainly in our multi-parish benefice, that our Zoom services enable a very inclusive congregation from across the benefice. We have people from all our parishes being involved, and we are considering probably going on with say once a month anyway, you know, after COVID, you know, AC if there is going to be after COVID. But it's an interesting and perhaps something positive to come out of COVID, that technology has provided a means of inclusion, which is interesting, particularly perhaps during the winter for some of our older members who might be reticent about coming. So I was trying to look at the positive of things. It doesn't replace going to church and being together, but on the other hand, for us, it's actually meant we've had the opportunity to see, you know, 35, 40 people from across our benefice on a regular basis, which has been rather wonderful. And the YouTube service, say Lamas, you know, we've got families from across the country, you know, 160 people viewing it when they could, and on Easter Day. So although you know we want to be back in church and we're going to be on Sunday, there are some positives, and we've all learned to use Zoom, you know, which has been fantastic. So I think perhaps to think in terms of the positives as well as part of our ongoing planning.
Thank you, Fiona. Anybody else wish to add any comments? Fiona, sorry, Penny, do you want to sum anything up, or are you happy to move on?
I'm happy to move on. I hope that we are inspired to do something. It would be just lovely if we think of some of this low-hanging fruit that would be easy to set up, and if we could do something by the end of this year rather than just talking about it. My heart I would feel that we'd be moved by the Spirit.
Well, thank you very much indeed, Penny. And I think that is something that's come out of all the pre-meetings we've done on discussing this sort of thing, is that the need for change within the deanery and within the church has been discussed for 5 years or more, and it keeps getting pushed into the long grass. And there is now an imperative, with an impending loss of a clergy post in our deanery, and the dwindling size of our congregations, there is an imperative to get out and do something. And we all profess our faith, and we all profess to follow Jesus' teaching, and his teaching very definitely to me, as a lay person, leads me to believe that we ought to move might and main in order to get something going and to bring our church back to life. And Penny, your ideas are undoubtedly the foundation of that. As Jesus might have said, the rock on which we can improve our deanery, to plagiarize in a slightly tasteless way. But if we can all think of that and take it back and develop these ideas and build them into something, that would be terrific. And it is going to be the main agenda item in the December Synod. And we hope that you will bring ideas from your parishes to make this work. So thank you very much, Penny. At the beginning, I got rather, I missed that we should be welcoming Paul Connell from Walford and Paul Cummings from Ross and Ruth Davis and Sue Evans, both from the parish of Welsh Newton. I'm sorry that I failed to welcome you properly at the beginning. I hope that you will find that there's lots to add and lots of messages to take back to your parishes, and that you will enjoy these meetings. Like everything in life, what you get out of these meetings is entirely proportional to what you put in them. And if you take the messages back to your parishes and bring back fruitful messages to the synod, we're going to have a really fruitful synod. If you put nothing into them and come and watch, and then say nothing in your report and bring back no messages, well, then we're all wasting our time. And that's really a message to everyone, including me. You know, we must really try and make this thing work. Welcome, new members, and I hope you enjoy it as much as all of the rest of us. The next item on the agenda is a deanery update from our rural dean.
Thank you, Patrick. Yes. Well, in fact, Patrick and I were with our fellow rural deans and lay co-chairs this morning. We had a Zoom meeting, and a number of items were discussed, including, you'll be pleased to know, what's happening with Y Reachers, which is that we actually now have dates for interviews.
Wow.
which is kind of a step forward. And the interviews are going to happen this side of Christmas as well, which is I think it's 8th and 9th of December, if I remember rightly, off the top of my head. 8th, 9th of December. So there will be an advert going out in the Church Times and on the diocesan website, and we will see what we will see and who we will get to apply and possibly shortlist and all of that lot. The good news is that we have actually in the diocese seem to become quite an attractive place. People do seem to want to come here, so which is quite nice. They've been shortlisting and things for various posts as well, so that's been quite good. The disadvantage of that is, of course, that there is a 12-month delay on the rebuild of Wysham Vicarage. So we are looking at alternative accommodation at the moment, which will probably be an existing vicarage, which is currently rented out, and that might well be for the period of about a year, maybe two, depending on how quickly the development goes ahead on the site of the current vicarage. Those of you who don't know, the diocese and Monmouth County Council have got together, and they're going to take the land and the vicarage where it is currently and build some mixed housing and a vicarage on it, a new vicarage on it. So there'll be a modern vicarage for whoever is appointed to move into, but it probably won't be ready for some time. And of course, whereas they might have hoped to make a start this spring, with COVID, that's not been the case, and so that's then been delayed until, I'm guessing they probably won't start till 2021, and it might be 2022 by the time the new vicarage is available. But that, you know, we will find them some accommodation somewhere in the relatively close to the deanery, to the parishes, I hope, so they don't have too many miles to travel to take their services. Again, depending a little bit on where we are in terms of numbers of people who can meet together in one place, and the new bishops' interview standards panels. I'm imagining that there will be myself, possibly Patrick, or a representative from the deanery, representatives from the parishes, and representatives from the patrons as well, because I think is one of the patronages a Downing Street one or a Royal one. I think there's yeah, I don't know. So there'll probably be 2, maybe even 3 panels of interviews as well for whoever gets shortlisted. So we will see with that. And then also just to say that one of the things that's been kicking around for a while and is finally coming to fruition is the reshaping of Hereford Deanery. If you think about where Hereford Deanery is at the moment, it's a mixture of the city churches and a sort of donut shape of rural churches, and that isn't really working well when because it's too much of a contrast between what the city is doing, what the rural areas are doing. And so there is a plan afoot to dissolve that big deanery and make a small Hereford City deanery, and then put the rural parishes into a number of the other deaneries around. And then there will be some consultations from the Bish coming out fairly soon about where those parishes will be placed. And it is possible that Ross and Archenfield Deanery may gain an extra parish at the top end. I'm sure we'll leave it at that at the moment, because there's not any formal consultations from that, because it's the bishop's prerogative apparently about how deaneries work and borders. So we'll leave it at that at the moment. But there will be discussions and things coming around on that. I think that's it from me on deanery updates. Patrick?
One extra point is that the new incumbent of Y Reaches is likely to give 20% of their time to being an assistant archdeacon. So that is a benefit, depending on which way you look at it, to the deanery, in that we will get an inside track onto what is going on in the archdeacon's mind and what is going on to policy in the centre of the diocese. It's a disbenefit in that we'll lose 20% of their time. So that's an interesting thing. On the balance, I thought about this a little bit when we were asked, and we didn't really have a choice, but we were asked if we would mind. And I suppose the real benefit is that it might attract someone a bit younger and a bit more ambitious who thinks that they might get on into the centre of the church, and it might just make the post more attractive when it's advertised, because there's that little bit extra above and beyond being a parish priest. But I actually don't know whether that's true or not, but it's just what occurred to me. Are there any questions for Mark before we move on to the Treasurer's report? And if I may make one observation as we move on to...
Sorry, Paul's waving his hand.
Oh, Paul.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, Paul.
Right, lovely. How much are you aware of the changes that have taken place with GP surgeries and the creation of networks? And our deanery corresponds reasonably closely at the southern end with the NHS network. And I wonder whether, the idea that deaneries could reflect some kind of social and political reality, whether you're taking the shape of those new GP networks into account when looking at new deaneries, or shapes of new deaneries.
I don't think they are, because I think a lot of it depends on personal relationships between vicars and surgeries. I know that, for example, the Ross surgeries have been pretty progressive in supporting Couch to 5K and the parkrun side of things, and also encouraging people to do gardening and to combat loneliness. And I think there has been some kind of link with the churches in Ross under that, but I'm not sure. I don't know about any wider kind of formal links. I'm thinking that perhaps I I don't know about any. I don't think there's a deanery-wide strategy on that, I'm afraid, Paul. It's certainly something we ought to think about, particularly when we've got something like, and then Sean, I'm sure, will back us up, when we've got, you know, another 300 houses being built in Ross, and the possibility of another 1,000 people coming there, and the strain that that's going to put on the Ross surgeries, and again, how the church responds to having a growing congregation or growing community there, and how we might, as a church, because obviously, if you think about where that is, that's on the on just off the A40 at Ross. They're quite a long way from St Mary's. They wouldn't see that as their local church. So actually putting some kind of church plant in its loosest sense in that community, you know, mirroring the possibly the surgery or a pharmacy or something like that as well, is something that's kind of on our minds, and I'm sure on Sean's mind as well, if Sean wants to say anything.
Thank you, Mark. Well, we're onto it already. We've had discussions with the developers, and we have spoken about starting some all-age type services in that development as soon as we possibly can.
Paul Connell, did you, your hand's still up? Did you want to?
Oh, sorry, I will take it. The point is that GP surgeries now are in a network, and it's not just the two in Ross. It goes up as far as Paul Baker. How far up does it go?
Well, it covers the Golden Valley, basically. There
That's
are
it.
about 5 of them. Just out of interest for information, Paul Connell chairs the patient participation group for Alton Street, and I chair the one for Pendine. So perhaps this is where we actually need to discuss with Sean, and perhaps bring it as an item on our next Zoom PPG meeting, because I'm very aware with health and social care, there's a huge opportunity to integrate within society. One of the big problems that has arisen, not only with alcoholism during C19, but also mental health. And Simon Linane is sort of heading this up from Alton Street point of view. And this is obviously a big place where both health, social care and the church can integrate in supporting people that feel isolated, have mental health problems within the big catchment areas that we have. And I think perhaps Paul and I can speak outside the meeting and liaise with Sean to see how there can possibly be an integration within what we're doing to incorporate what Paul's suggestion is of GP surgery groups and how that interfaces with our deanery.
Thank you very much. And I think it'd be a brilliant idea to bring back to the next meeting, when we bring back ideas about developing the deanery. Something that's a little bit more thought through on that, and on integration with the national health structure might be very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I think the Golden Valley side would obviously be covered by Abidor Deanery, I think, isn't it?
Mm.
So and they're reshaping.
Yeah. Mm.
Any further questions for Mark before we move on to the Treasurer's report? I can't see any hands, so Paul, would you like to take the Treasurer's report away?
Okay, well, I always try to make the Treasurer's report stimulating and interesting rather than boring, and I always feel a bit like the tax collector and turning over tables in the temples, actually. But as I see Stephen Herbert's smiling face, who's the director for the whole of the diocese, if I get anything wrong or miss anything out, Stephen, if you'd kindly come in and correct it. But the report has been circulated, albeit a bit late, because I want to get the latest information. But if I can go through just the headings and then take any questions, you can always read it at your leisure. Good bedtime reading or keep you awake, whichever way you want to look at it. First thing is, where are we this year? Well, the latest figures I had was in 20th of August. Our offer for the 2020 was 363,000. At the point of August, we had nearly 230,000. We still got 133,000 to come in. We are very fortunate in on our deanery, because we actually introduced direct debit payments, which means they stream in every month, except a few that pay quarterly, which makes life a lot easier. But it does mean I get a little bit less in touch with what's happening. But as we stood at the end of August, except for a few parishes, most were keeping up with their monthly, quarterly payments. But it does look like at the moment, and Stephen perhaps might have later figures, that we're going to probably be about 12,000 short this year. And this year is less in offer than 2019. And I would ask in this opportunity whether PCCs would take a close look and see if they could top up their offer. We do actually have this forthcoming parish gift days, and the bishop did say that it was the 20th of September, but we can actually spread it out to the end of the years. And we did hear some people be using harvest festivals as an opportunity here, but we would ask in God's generosity that we're generous also to see if we can actually get to the 363,000 we offered. And I'll come on to the reason for that a bit later. The 2021 parish offer, and I think we all fully understand what an exceptional time we're going, life-changing time we're going through, and it's quite really scaring of what's going to happen as a result of COVID-19. And I think this has obviously been reflected in the cautious way in which people have made their parish offers for 2021, which has resulted actually in us being some 45,000 short down on previous year, which is 12% from the original offer of 2020. This is a big figure, but if you break it down for the 37 PCCs, it represents about 1,200 per PCC. What I'm coming on to say is the average cost of stipendiary clergy in the diocese, including all related costs, that's pensions, on costs, etc., is around 60,000, which means this offer will only covers about 5.3 stipendiary posts, whilst the current year just covers the 6. And we know that part of what we're looking at is how to restructure the deanery, possibly with one less person over time. So really, the focus has to be on how can we increase our income, and well, it's a two-way thing here. Parish giving scheme is an obvious way, contactless giving, and any other ways we can think of. We had only this week sort of a seminar with Richard Jones for parish giving, looking at all the alternatives and what they do in the States and how important giving is, and part of the culture, and to reflect God's generosity and our own generosity, and looking at ways of increasing our giving throughout the community, not being afraid to ask, but to be thankful and to demonstrate what's being achieved through the giving, and not forgetting that it's not just the maintenance of the building, but the important thing is the growth, ministry and mission of the church. So this is, and that is on the ground flow, from the ground roots is through our stipendiary ministry and all ordained and lay people involved. So what we need to do is to look closely at what we have offered. Some parishes do, and they know, do have reserves, and maybe this is a time where we need to work collaboratively within the deanery to sustain the number of stipendiary ministers that is going to allow our ministry and mission to grow, and to encourage lay people to become more involved and to support them within the growth of our ministry and mission. So moving on then to parish giving scheme, of the 37 PCCs, we have 29 or 78% have joined the scheme, with some 200 active donors giving monthly, mostly monthly, 15 quarterly and 20 giving annually. There are 4 PCCs pending resolutions to join the parish giving scheme, and 5 PCCs at the moment appear not terribly interested in joining it, and we're trying to encourage them to relook at stuff, particularly as we've not been able to hold services and have plate collection. But it's been demonstrated that if people sign up to regular giving, that you end up by receiving a lot more. And of course, if you add the inflation link, that increases it still further. The average parish giving scheme donation expressed as a weekly gift before gift aid in our deanery is £8.71 against a diocesan one of 10.66. So we are a bit behind. And it is important that people do sign up to the inflationary thing. Gift days, I don't know whether you've seen, and I put the link in the report, the video message that the bishop gave. He read the book about the SAS and how that works, and he was saying the frontline people do the dangerous stuff and carry out the missions, but there's a huge support for them. And he was likening these to our parish priests, because they're the frontline delivery people that need the support that we can give them. And to reflect actually God's generosity in perspective to our own desired response to God's generosity. And I think we need to concentrate on our core giving based on what we can do to improve the parish offers. And I would strongly ask, where benefices are signalling a reduction in combined parish offer, and I'm talking at benefice level, because we know within benefices some parishes struggle more than others, but as a benefice to look at it and see what they could do to actually improve the offer during the year, because we can only deliver what we can afford to employ in terms of parish priests. So by way of conclusion, I'd just like to say that we have a lot of prayerful work to do over the weeks and months, but it's vital, going back to what Penny said, everybody, every person involved has a gift, has a skill, possibly, hopefully have an interest which they will develop, and while working together within the financial constraints, and by working collaboratively across benefices, across the deanery, using support schemes, cost-saving schemes, I feel that confident that in the longer term, we're going through a very difficult restructuring, a world-changing experience, but I think synergetically over time, that where there's a will and a passion, we can actually deliver the ministry and mission that we need to. And if we are generous and pray and look for to support God's generosity, we will actually get there. That is my belief. I think we have to keep positive and we have to celebrate success. I know everybody groans when you talk about Treasurer's reports, but it is the engine oil. And if you run out of engine oil, however good the vehicle is, it comes to a grinding halt and incredibly expensive to repair if it can be. So I would look at it as that. It's the engine oil that keeps everything working. But we all have our parts in the engine, and let us celebrate and what we're doing and work collaboratively across boundaries. I know in rural areas, people tend to be quite parochial and think of their own PCC, their own church. But I think this is a time when we need to look broader. And I think what C19 has done is, because we're streaming stuff, people can see for every hour. So let's prayerfully work together. Oh, I've just seen my internet connection is unstable. I don't know whether it's a result of what I've said, but if there are any questions, or Stephen, if you're still smiling and not got a big stick out, if there's anything I've missed or would like to add to what I've said, I would be most grateful. So any questions or anything that you'd like to add to it? I think the one thing the bishop said in July was he believes in giving permission. We want permission to do stuff. We give ourselves permission. Let's give each other permission to have a go, to see what we can do, encourage people. Some people are a bit timid to come forward. So if everybody steps back, they're in the front line anyway. So we can encourage people to have a go and see what they can do. And this synergy can actually take off, and we can achieve great things through it. And any questions?
Well, thank you very much, Paul. And it reminds me, when you have such a smiling face as you're delivering the accounts and your report, how much God loves a cheerful giver. And so
it's a hemlock on page.
Can equate to that. And the bishop did another talk today, which you can look at on YouTube. And it was the last one time he says that he's going to talk about money. And he was remembering that comes from Jesus's teaching, the widow's groat and the rich man's generous sum. And when you balance them up, the widow's groat was far more important and far more of a penalty to her than the rich man's generous sum.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought the bishop put it rather eloquently. So if you've got a minute, do listen to it's 4 minutes 35 seconds his talk this week. So it's not an onerous listen, and he speaks jolly well. Are there any questions for the treasurer? I can see no hands there. Any comments from Stephen Herbert for the treasurer, from the senior management of the treasurer?
Certainly not. I wouldn't dare tread on Paul's toes. But no, all good. And I think I just encourage everyone. This is all absolutely possible, as Paul said. So pray and plan, and as Penny would say, act. Thank you.
Right. Any further questions or comments?
I've not been sacked then.
Not yet. If there are no further comments, we'll move on, because I know people have got other things to do. The next item is provisional dates of 2021 meetings. And those are the same dates we had this year, just transposed by a day or two, so they fall on the same week. And so there's no rocket science gone into them. And if there are any major objections, please let us know. Marion is probably the best person to let to know, and we can revise them. But we'll work with those until we hear otherwise, just so we've got some framework for next year's meetings. Is there any other business that people wish to transact tonight?
Sorry, Patrick, just to say, obviously at the moment, it looks like the Zoom meetings will be probably standard, maybe even until the spring. Certainly our next meeting in December will be a Zoom meeting, and I think people will probably have to pencil in March, because we're not, I don't think we're in a situation where we can start saying we will be meeting yet, but things might change.
Any other business people wish to raise or transact?
So I should have given apologies for Tim Starling and for Crispin as well, and Chris Blanchard.
Oh, thank you.
Paul's got his hand up. Patrick?
Yeah, not actually any other business, but personally I find it a bit disappointing we haven't got more come to this gathering or synod, and I think this does underline the importance that we take this back to our parishes, to our PCCs. But as Penny said, with this small number, we really need a bigger critical mass to make this all happen. So can we think and pray how we're going to get this back to the people distanced in the pew and get their feedback and encourage them to make statements? They may think they're silly, but they could be highly relevant and may encourage other people to say. So we really, really need to get this back to the the masses, to our congregations and the people on the fringe of the church as well. And this can be done throughout the week as well. Just think of ways of how we can communicate this back, because it's not long to the 1st of December, and we would truly like to have feedback. I know Jill sent out, Wiley has sent out a questionnaire to PCCs about their patterns of service, and a lot of information which is due back the end of October, but we need to be able to analyze this and come with some feedback again in the 1st of December. We want to see progress, action again, as Penny would say. We want to see something happen as a result of this this Deanery Synod gathering.
Thank you very much, Paul. There being no further other business, we'll close by saying the grace. But before we do that, the date, time and location of... Oh, sorry, Marianne.
Can I just check a couple of surnames, please? For Rachel, please? If she can hear me.
Yeah, Lewis.
Got to unmute.
Sorry?
Lewis.
Oh, Rachel Lewis. Right. And Wendy.
Price.
Wendy Price, yeah. Okay, thanks very much. Thank you.
Just in closing the meeting, were two things. Ruth Davis, in welcoming you, I also should have mentioned your cat, and we loved seeing the cat across your screen. Absolutely charming, and it seemed to be a black cat, which I'm sure might bring us all luck. The second point,
She's a tortoiseshell. He's a tortoiseshell.
Tortoiseshell. Just my screen's not very good, Ruth, but he's very welcome too. My second point, really, though, we've had 33 people in this meeting. There are actually 38 parishes in the church, in the deanery. So we haven't even got one person per parish, which is disappointing. And I very much hope that the incumbents will encourage people to come to future meetings, because at the moment it is the future of the deanery that is being discussed and decided. Synod is a Saxon word meaning gathering. And the earliest synod I can remember is the Synod of Whitby, which I think was in 663 AD, at which the Northumbrian kingdom, at Whitby obviously, the Northumbrian kingdom decided to adopt the Roman Catholic version of Christianity against the Celtic version. So there are some important decisions made at synods, but it is just a Saxon word meaning gathering. So we've started calling this a Synod of Leek Gathering, just to reflect the fact that although it is an ancient way of meeting in church matters and has made some very important decisions, it's also a modern way of meeting. And we are going to be making some important decisions. So for the whole of my time that I've been on the Deanery Synod, it's been quite a boring and turgid thing. Well, now is the time to prick your ears up and come, because otherwise the decisions will be made and you won't be part of them. And that's the message to take back. Thank you all very much for coming. And if you could put that message about, so much the better. The next meeting is on Tuesday, the 1st of December, 7:30 p.m. Almost certainly a virtual meeting. I can see very, very little prospect of it being anything other than Zoom, but we'll give you details nearer the time. And please, please, please take back the message to the parishes that Penny Pudrell has given a thumping good presentation, has spent a lot of time and effort, as of the chapter, thinking out ideas, and we need now the input from the pews of how to improve these ideas, take them forwards, have other ideas, and work together towards producing a better deanery. And all of our bottom line is the love of God and the fellowship of the Holy Spirit. So if we could join together in closing with the words of the grace together, we'll close the meeting. Thank you. And I'd ask the Rural Dean to lead it in case I get it wrong.
The grace of our Lord Jesus Christ and the love of God and the fellowship of the Holy Spirit be with us all evermore. Amen.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.